Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side. OG boy. Day we hustle, but the night we OG boy. Know that they ride or die. I'm a OG boy. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side. Boy. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side. My name came up a lot of sounds. More when I was not a...
What's up, people? What's up, everybody? We back at you again. This is Fire, as in faithful God. Got my man Kanan.
What's up? What's up?
What's up, man? Hey, this is the session that we like to call Chop It Up, just bringing you the latest in news and sort of what's going on in the world, and with a spin of wisdom on it. And the newest R. Kelly case, man, it's not looking good for R. Kelly. This is also shout out to Hip Hop News Uncensored, and an article that I'll cite here. This is from BNC News, but basically what's going on is not only is my man being allegedly messing with underage girls, apparently he doesn't discriminate when it comes to gender either. We got a young man, that's right, a young man coming forward. We'll talk about that later. Also, we got Black media, that is mainstream Black media, is filing a lawsuit or threatening to take legal action against the Biden administration for discrimination in advertising funding around the jab situation. And you all know what we mean by the jab situation, but since we don't want to get a flag situation, we're going to leave that at jab. Again, shout out to TD Hip Hop Media on that one. Also got an article here from blackenterprise.com that we'll cite and pin that in the comments as well. Also, who the hell is Kevin Samuels?
Right. So Kevin Samuels is basically, he's an internet personality. I think he technically calls himself like an image consultant or internet consultant, but he talks about relationships. And I think, in my opinion, he's kind of just another one of those battle with the sexes type of personalities. That's kind of the overall gist of the content that you're going to get from him. But he's coming from a male perspective. So it's more like a lot of people look at him as a woman basher.
Okay.
I've listened to a few of his videos. I haven't listened to all of them, but I just listened to some clips. And he's basically just a straightforward dude who says some things that a lot of people don't like. But at the end of the day, I feel like this is America. It's a free country. People should be able to use their platforms how they want. I mean, he hasn't said anything to the degree of like, you should harm people. You know what I mean? But
Right.
just because you don't like what he's saying, I don't think people should go as far as this. Like I came across basically an article saying that there's a petition against him to have him removed from YouTube and Instagram. All right. And this petition has been signed already. It's already 29,780 people that have signed it already,
Yes.
And basically he says things that are provocative for sure. Here, like a quote, he was talking to a young lady. One of his quotes was, she made a comment saying that she wanted to be with a man who makes six figures. And his response was, you look average at best and you're going to die alone with that type of attitude. Okay, so
Oh man.
this is the type of content that he delivers. So I think it's for me it's funny, but some of the women are taking it very personal to the point where this petition actually says that Kevin Samuels content is detrimental because it leads, they try to tie it in with the abuse against African American women. They said that this type of content perpetuates that. And that's what I kind of was like, oh, that's kind of deep.
Right.
That's kind of deep to try to throw that on a personality who's just saying things that you don't favor, to go to the extent of saying, and I'm gonna quote this, It says, with the rise of violence against women, specifically African American women, YouTube YouTuber Kevin Samuels have galvanized a community of men of all races and nationalities in an outspoken hatred of women.
Hmm.
End quote. So again, they taking it to a whole nother level. All right, in my
Wow.
opinion. He just doing this thing. He do say things that are provocative, but like I said, most of the content is just a matter of you agree or disagree. I don't think people should take it to that extent. But check him out. Leave comments what y'all think about that guy. I won't go too much further into him because like I said, I really don't know much of his content, but from what I've heard, um, it's pretty entertaining at most.
Yeah, man. It seems like one of those cases, and it's sort of like, to me, we need to better categorize these areas of offense and what we deem dangerous or hostile or violent. So without taking sides and just objectively speaking, it's kind of like nowadays when someone's feelings are hurt, that is also construed as, hate speech or
Hmm.
inciting violence or fighting words. When in actuality, if, for example, just using the quote that you use as an example, and I understand that the guy's made, you know, lots of quotes.
Hmm.
If someone initiates and says, I need a man who makes six figures, and they say that in a public space, and if a man doesn't say, if a random average man doesn't say, hey, I find that offensive because I don't make six figures, and I think that that's belittling men, and it's causing us to have sort of complexes about our income and everything, and it's hateful in this area of in this era of violence against Black men,
Hmm.
right? The reason a man wouldn't say that is because, it wouldn't stand up, it wouldn't hold water,
Right.
because the woman is expressing a personal opinion. But on the other hand, if a man replies and says, hey, I see you in a public sphere the same way I can point my camera and record you, and there's no reasonable expectation of privacy, I'm going to comment on what you said. It's
Right.
like if I go on Facebook and make a post, I can't get offended if someone comes along and then they tag their comment in a section there. If he says you look average at best, then you're, in my opinion, gonna die alone. I don't know if he used that disclaimer, but is that tantamount to hate speech? Is that tantamount to inciting violence, etc.?
Right.
And in my opinion, it's not.
Yeah.
And it's one of those instances of where you get an emotional response that suddenly somehow it crosses over into, okay, this is a concrete, we have a problem with this because it's an actual problem in the real world and not just in my feelings.
Right. No, that's a good way to put it. I agree with that. And like I said, this dude I haven't listened to much of, but yeah, it's like I said, it's a battle of the sexes thing. Realistically, like that sums it up. And this is just another branch of that tree, if you will.
Facts.
Well, yeah, man, check it
Man.
out.
All right. That's Mr. Kevin Samuels.
Another thing about it is that I think he draws in my opinion, when I read the comments like under his videos, I think he actually draws in more of and this is my opinion, I think he really draws in a homosexual male crowd, like a tone, because a lot of the stuff that these dudes be saying in the comments is way more far fetched than what he actually says. Like he says things kind of in general, but when you see like the hatred towards women in the comments, I think a lot of those dudes don't even like women because I couldn't personally have that much hatred towards a woman,
Wow.
especially based off of these type of comments that he makes. And I think that's more key than even the statements that he make himself, in my opinion. But like I said, check out some of his videos and see for yourself.
Oh man, that's interesting because it puts me in the mind of that other dude. They call him uh, well, Tariq Nasheed used to call him Tommy Soda Moisture. And then I think the other dude calls him Tammy Sotomayor.
Oh
But it's
man.
a dude that dude, Tommy Sotomayor, who has basically he started out as some sort of pundit, controversial pundit, etc. But then he moved quickly into hating, belittling black people, belittling black
Mm.
women in particular, and calling for execution of black people in some instances,
Oh
etc.
wow.
It's more of a rant. And man, the sort of following that you'll see in his comment section, it's people who have an emotional sort of axe to grind and swing at the black community and especially black women. And yeah, you're gonna tend to get an overwhelming sort of element in there. Everybody from maybe just a jaded man who's lashing out or angry at women,
Right.
all the way to the guys on the other end who genuinely hate women
Right.
and want nothing to do with them, so that obviously they're going to have limited options when it comes to intimacy.
Right. Like,
And
yeah.
everybody across the spectrum. So I think
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be interesting to follow.
Yeah, man. Just check it out.
Next up, black media shut out of let's see, how can we say this? I could spell it. I'll say the jab. The jab is a solution. Advertising. So basically, what's going on is there's been money set aside from the federal government, i.e., the Biden administration, him and his sidekick Kamala Harris, that they've set aside funds for media entities to get news out there and actually promote that the black community go and receive this jab solution. And out of all the money that they've set aside to do this, apparently, allegedly, they have not been giving the same amount to black media sources in their attempts to push the jab solution. So I have a article here. This is from this is from Black Enterprise, and it's online. I'll put the link here also in the description, and I'll just read some of the highlighted quotes here. The Biden is titled "Black Media Shut Out of Advertising by Biden Administration" by Derek T. Dingle, August 23rd, 2021. The Biden administration has shut out scores of Black-owned media firms from engaging in one of the nation's biggest public health advertising campaigns, encouraging Black Americans to get the jab. Okay. Based on analysis Black Enterprise conducted from data received from the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, which has been charged with oversight of the outreach efforts, Black-owned media firms have only received a fraction of the overall committed media spend of $212 million to date, and roughly a third of the paid media dollars on advertising targeted at Black Americans. So basically, out of the $212 million to date, $35.616 million, or 16.8%, was supposed to be allocated to Black media sources. However, the amount spent specifically with Black-owned media, including any combination of newspapers, websites, radio stations, local out-of-home vendors, digital billboards, etc., there has been 11.9 million spent. So real quick mention of these Black media who we're talking about. These Black-owned media entities, including Roland Martin Unfiltered, Allen Media Group, Black Enterprise, and others. Okay, they're now demanding equity in the distribution of advertising dollars from the Biden administration, or they plan to take action, including calls for an investigation into a pattern of systemic racism in federal government advertising that dates back to the Clinton administration. Man, the problem I have with this is we did a I can't remember which video we did a while back when we talked about hustling backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And this, in my opinion, is hustling backwards. When I look at people, especially this Roland Martin guy, who says now they're incensed, they're enraged,
Right.
and now they want to call the Biden administration racist. And the problem I have with that is they're actually using language in here saying several Black media owners have stressed that the Biden administration needs to be, quote unquote, held accountable in ensuring that their Black firms gain federal advertising commitments. Now, here's the problem, man. As I recall back during the election cycles, when genuine grassroots Black media, mainly, YouTubers for the most part, and people that had blogs who could still afford to be just genuine and not, and
Mm-hmm.
state their opinion objectively, is the word I'm looking for. It was Roland Martin and such that were, they were sort of the poster boys in saying, now's not the time to do that.
Right.
We don't hold them accountable and demand tangibles up front or whatever. We get them in office and then we hold their feet to the fire. And it was sort of an in-house civil war in Black America over that. And I can recall specifically Roland Martin saying, he was calling Black men, especially because he didn't dare say much about Black women specifically, but he definitely would get on his high horse and say Black men were stupid for not supporting Biden Harris, or are we Black, and questioning our Blackness and all this
Here's
stuff.
the real issue here. The attacks on Senator Kamala Harris's Blackness really started the moment she announced. And where it's really coming from, this is Black self-hate cloaked in Black self-love. There are people out there who are saying that because she is not a descendant of slaves, she really can't speak to the Black experience. They dismiss the fact that she went to an HBCU. They dismiss her actual background, and that's what the real issue here. There are Black people out there who are angry that who say Obama didn't do enough for African Americans, and what they're not doing is demanding really policy questions. They're questioning her Blackness. You even have some fools out there who are Black, especially a lot of Black men, who are criticizing her because her husband is white. And so I understand that folks are talking about Donald Trump Jr. retweeting this, but really you've got some asinine Black folks out there who are the ones who are questioning her Blackness, and they are shameful and they are despicable, and then they should be called out at every turn.
And he was saying after the fact they were going to hold their feet to the fire, and then they did sort of a victory lap, a public victory lap when Biden and Harris got into office. And now all of a sudden that they're not giving you the amount of money that you want. And mind you, they want money to push the jab as a solution on a community that has a legacy of health disparity. This didn't just start in 2019 or, the Black community has been suffering disproportionately from heart disease, high blood pressure, heart-related illnesses, depression, stroke, bad diet, food deserts, and this same mainstream Black media who was not threatening legal action and repercussions to any given administration.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden that it comes down to a point in time where they're not getting the money they feel they want. Now, all of a sudden they're using words such as racist. And this goes all the way back to Bill Clinton, right? The first honorary Black president.
Right.
And they're threatening legal action, man. That's the moral problem I have with that.
No, that makes sense. And I agree. You should have a problem with that because it's not genuine when you try to force people or basically criticize people about their Blackness or whatever and say that you should vote for these candidates just because, whatever. And then, like you said, now you come back and now you basically agreeing with the people who was against them in the beginning, but you think it's okay because you just want a little money out the deal. So you basically just exploiting Black people for profitable gain at that point because you don't care about the actual issues. So when Black people are saying we don't want to vote for Kamala and Biden, instead of listening to our genuine concerns, you just want to criticize us for ratings and views. So you want to say, oh yeah, black people stupid and are you black, blah blah blah. But even those words don't mean nothing once you see an action like this. Like
Right.
he's clearly just saying and doing whatever he can to gain attention because he's all for self. And
Off.
yeah, all for self. And it's actually this lady who's also a YouTuber. She go by the name of Vicky Dillard, I believe, Dillard.
Yeah,
And
I'm
she,
hip to her.
oh, okay, so she did a little piece on Roland Martin anyway, and I would say that she pretty much summed him up in a nutshell. Like she dealt with him real quick. So I would advise y'all to go check out her video on Roland Martin. And
Yeah. Shoot
cause
me
yeah,
that link, bro, and we'll put it here also in the video. We'll
yeah,
put a shout out to Vicky Dillard.
yeah, she do her thing. So yeah, but he's just one of those type of characters. I really don't it's unfortunate that he has well, I won't say unfortunate because again, I disagree with him, but I don't think that should affect anybody's pockets. But he is just the type of person in my opinion who's all for self and the things that he say he really don't believe at heart a lot of times. I don't think so. I think he'll say anything to gain a dollar. And if he
Right.
don't get his dollar, he'll do what he's doing now. He'll turn against you, and sue
Right.
you, even though, so I don't know what to think about what to say much more about people like that.
Yeah, man. And I typically don't jump into the fray of foundational Black Americans, American descendants of slaves versus Pan-Africanism, etc. Because I believe, like, just like you can have a concentric circle, there's a place for people to get in where they fit in. And I don't think that we necessarily should even think in terms of polarized either or, like either you're
Right.
ADOS or you're for immigrants, or either you're
Right.
Pan-Africanist or, I don't
Right.
buy into that. I believe that everybody can play a role and have a role in the overall pursuit of justice.
I
So
agree.
in the same sense that I'm not Haitian, right? But I could play a role in bringing justice to Haiti, right, in a global context. But then that means that doesn't mean I'm going to be playing the same role as a native Haitian would play, and
Right.
that I would expect some money or any sort of tangible kickback from what Haiti may be owed, once all the dust settles.
Right.
So, but that being said, like, I don't think Roland Martin is even if he was born here, maybe he was born here, but I think he's from immigrant legacy, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And I think that, I think either Tariq Nasheed or Professor Black Truth, someone pointed that out at some point. They did an expose on the guy, and he is not even. So it's a question of
Okay.
sometimes when someone has a legacy that's different than an actual native Black Americans, then we have to be careful about understanding what their allegiance is, because if you're not a foundational Black American, though that's not always the whole question, but sometimes if you're not a foundational Black American, then it becomes more obvious why it's that much easier for you to be disconnected from the
Right.
grassroots and the genuine cause, because that's not your stomping ground.
Well said.
So yeah, man, roll and cut it out. So again, take that for what it's worth. People have their opinions about, the severity of the impact in reality. And is it worth it to take a solution that could be allegedly experimental and permanent, right, in its effects in nature, versus the good old getting good nutrition, exercising, working out, taking care of your health, so that no matter which strain of which disease, whether it be manufactured, engineered, altered genetically, or organic, whatever your thoughts or sentiments on that, the best solution to that and any scope of potential health problems on the horizon, it's going to come back to nutrition and taking care of oneself, getting
Right.
exercise, and fortifying the body. and the mind. You know, that's physically, that's psychologically. You know, my only question would be, why is not our Black media being incentivized to push that? Why are they not pushing that solution as a dire imperative? You got to do it now. Don't you care about yourself and your family?
Right.
You know, as now they want to get on board and get money to push this jab solution when they could push the real organic solution, man. But no, you know.
Oh, that's true. And it shows that it's not even about health, because Black people and just Americans in general have been dying for health related from preventable stuff. So this what the preventable diseases are still more of an issue than even, you know, these other viruses and whatnot.
Right. The
that are
preventable.
around.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's like if you cared about America's health, we would have saw this 50 years ago. Just a push for Americans to do better health wise, you know, and promoting healthy foods, healthy eating, all of that stuff, because we've been dying of heart disease, and you know, Black people in particular, you know, high rates of diabetes and obesity and all that stuff. And I'm like, well, where was, like you said, where was the funding to push good health back then? So
Right.
if you was really concerned about a people's health, this would have been something that would have been addressed years ago. So now we see that it has nothing to do with anything other than power and control for the most part, and money, because it comes out of nowhere. And now you're trying to say, oh, it's because we care about your health, but you haven't been caring about my health all these other years. I just
Right.
can't buy. I'm not gonna buy that. So
Yeah, man. What happens when the town crier goes to sleep or is on the take? Can you imagine if you got say you have a people, you have a community, say you go back in time and you have a Hebrew community and they got walls around the city and they got a town crier up there on the wall whose job is to look at the coast to see what's coming, potential threats, whether that be invaders or storms on the horizon. And they're supposed to wake people up and cry in the night, in the most vulnerable moments, and say, hey, everybody wake up, there's this threat. But if you got that person that's on the take and they allow invaders to come in, or they ignore certain threats to the city because they're getting paid to only focus on certain threats, you know, in a day of reckoning, well, figuratively, in a day of reckoning, right? Whose side is that town crier really on? You know, and what sort of consequences should they face? You know, and when it comes to that warfare. All right, man. Hey, I believe I can fly.
Uh-oh.
R. Kelly, man, say it ain't so.
Oh man, not R. Kelly.
Say it ain't so, man. Look.
What we got with R. Kelly? Come on, man.
Oh my goodness, bro. And this is the latest. Like I said, this comes from shout outs to Hip Hop News Uncensored. And this comes from an article. This source is from an article in the New York Times, stated August 30th, 2021. R. Kelly trial. Sex abuse against children. R. Kelly news. After female testimony, man claims sexual abuse at hands of singer. All right.
You said man?
Man, as in M-A-N. And I mean biologically. Not
biological,
not a woman who identifies as man, or you know, this is a M-A-N, right? Starting with the M.
You talking about XY chromosome?
I talk right, organically male.
Okay.
Like when he came out and the doctor said it's a boy.
Okay.
And yeah,
from birth.
He didn't say it's a them or.
Oh man.
All that aside. Sorry, let's get back. Rewind back on topic here. This is a man who claimed sexual abuse at the hands of the legendary R&B singer that had all y'all stepping. All right, I got some highlighted phrases from the article, and this is alleged. This is a quote from the victim. He claims that R. Kelly asked him when he was 17 years old what I was willing to do for music, the witness said. He replied, I'll carry your bags. Anything you need, I'll be willing to do. Okay. That's not it. That's not it. He said, Kelly responded before asking him if he ever fantasized about having sex with men. Pause. Bro, a while back, we did a video, or a short while back, we did a video on the hypersexualization of the society.
Mm-hmm.
And I want the listeners to keep that in mind as, we move forward through this. I'm gonna pause here. I'm not going to read the actual acts, the illicit acts that he claims that Kelly performed on him at that time. It is here in the article. You all can go follow that link right there and you can see it. But he says he kept seeing Kelly after that because he, quote, I really wanted to make it in the music industry, he said. So yeah, man, this is messed up. Even as an allegation, it's disturbing. But my problem is, and one thing I noticed, I want to get your opinion on this, Kanan.
Yeah.
What do you think about people? And I think this is the first time where we see people that are involved in these sort of satellite influencers and participants, even people's parents of some of these underage people that encourage them, pack their little backpack for them as, they go off to hop in R. Kelly's limousine, man, but weren't ever part of that scrutiny initially. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's starting to really just show the true face of America in general, and just American culture and society. It's all just crumbling down. Now they like to put black faces on the cover of everything that's toxic, if you will. But with this particular case in R. Kelly, I've always had a stance of like, I can't comment on any of the actions that he did because I didn't witness them. And I'm real big on, especially if it's like slanderous, like these is big allegations. This is not small time stuff. I don't know what happened. I don't know what the motive is. I don't really even understand the evidence that's being presented, especially after having somewhat of a similar situation happen with Bill Cosby recently, where he gets released after all the slander and tear down and blah blah blah. But anyway, to answer your question, I think that kids have always been targeted in America for these like sex trafficking type of situations, and so many people's hands are in these pots that we never ever think about who helped them do this. And I
Right.
think that's why they focus on the bigger picture, because they know when you hear R. Kelly, don't nobody care about his limo driver.
Right.
Ain't nobody thinking. So if you say R. Kelly's caught in sex scandal, you ain't thinking about nobody else. And I think that's almost a scapegoat for those people.
Yeah.
They connect with these people who are high profile, so that when stuff hit the fan, they can always say, "Oh, this is R. Kelly." So they do it under your account. So it goes to show that even black people, when you rise to the top, you do have to be aware of who's around you, because, for example, we don't know the fullness to the extent of what's really going on in this case. We don't know how aware R. Kelly was of, people using his accounts or his names to do these things, or if he was actually involved in these things himself. We have a lot of speculation based off of things that we know. For instance, him being married to Aaliyah, things that will make the story sound true, but at the same time, until you really see all the evidence and get all the stories and hear exactly what's taking place, I still think it's too early to draw such a conclusion to say whether we think this case is even valid.
Yeah.
If that answers that question. But a lot of it has to do with just exposing the American society and the hypocrisy that we practice as a nation when it comes to stories like this, because people don't care about the issue. They It's just more of a hatred towards the person, and it's
Right.
starting to show.
Yeah, that's a good answer, man. I think like you said, it exposes a lot of hypocrisy because whether or not the allegations are true, and I personally, I think there's a lot of truth to it. I think there's a lot of truth to a lot of the allegations. Obviously, you're going to have sort of the tag-alongs and the fallout, but I think that at its core, I think that a lot of it is probably going to turn out to be valid, and they claim that there's a real solid case against them. Contrary to a group popular opinion, the legal analysts are saying that those that have seen, they say there's a lot of substance to the allegations in terms of evidence this time. But I think going back to what you said about the hypocrisy of it, is like people forget that the law and the courts are supposed to be to procure justice for victims, right? So when you talk about the law and the court, and now the court has expanded to the court of public opinion, if it still has the same mission of getting justice, then you would think that all guilty parties, as much as possible, would, and as much as recognizable in any given case, would be called to task. Because if they're in the same courtroom and in the same court space, then they should be held accountable to the extent of their involvement. But traditionally, what we've seen is that they would focus on in R. Kelly's case is a perfect example. They focus on the figurehead and everything that figurehead was doing, but forget that there's an entire entourage of people around this person, an entire entourage of witnesses that have seen things, that have heard things, that know things. And, and even like I said, expanding that to parents and other adult workers who were around. Now, all of a sudden, you don't focus on them, but you want to focus on that figurehead in the court of public opinion. That, to me, that just points out not only hypocrisy, but that there's another agenda there, that's above and beyond, or at least outside the scope of whether or not R. Kelly is guilty in that case, because the man has been allowed to operate like that for decades. And he's made hits, and he's had people stepping, and he's been loved in an emotional realm by Black people. He's been observed apparently by, federal agencies and et cetera. But now at this day and time, it's time to sensationalize and put that court of public opinion into use.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that is it's gonna show a lot of people's ignorance, and it's gonna show, like I said, the real nature of the nation that we live in. For instance, I don't think people understand what it means. I don't think a lot of people even know what the age of consent is in a lot of states. Sexual consent, right? So you hear about R. Kelly messing with a 16-year-old, and people like she's underage. But then if you look at certain state laws, 16 is an age of consent. And if you look at the definition, the legal definition of age of consent means you legally have the right to consent to sex.
Right.
In all circumstances. Okay. But if you don't know this, you just hear R. Kelly messing with a 16-year-old. Oh my God, what is he doing? And that's why a lot of the states, they had to retract a lot of their cases, because the age of consent has changed throughout time.
Right.
So it's not to justify the actions, but when you talk about legal matters, this is why I say the validity of the cases, we really don't know how much weight they're gonna hold. They always say that it's a great case, because that's what lawyers do. They have to even prove that. But when there's money involved, money speaks volumes in America. People can be paid off. All of a sudden, there's changes to this and changes to that, and victims cross-examination. All of that stuff. Like court is BS anyway. So if you really focus on the issue of really protecting young girls or protecting minors, R. Kelly really would have nothing to do with that. This is just a high profile case for ratings. I don't, like I said, I don't think people even care if R. Kelly is guilty or innocent. It's just one more thing to talk about. It's one more thing. However, it's still kids out here being sexually exploited. So if that's really the issue, then that's what we should be focusing on as a nation, in my opinion. And those are the things that kind of bother me with these celebrities, is that when a celebrity get caught up in something, then all of a sudden that issue is important. Um, and then once that celebrity goes to jail or not goes to jail, then nobody cares about the issue no more. And I think that that's problematic.
Right, right. Well said, man. So check this out. More on that. Talking about this being one of the landmark cases where, or in my experience, this is one of the first times where we'll see that alleged sort of go along, get along entourage sort of becoming part of the focal. And I
Hmm.
don't know if that's because of grassroots scrutiny, and it's sort of like how mainstream will tweak the way they're approaching and doing things based on, monitoring of the public opinion. But I think more people in some ways are more aware now, and they're sort of honing in on like what you just said, like, okay, you want to focus on this R. Kelly, but not this larger problem that we have, which
Hmm.
is a hypersexualized society and situation where people feel like this is normal and okay in their everyday lives and the things that they witness. But all of a sudden, when there's a sensationalized case, they want to jump on a moral bandwagon, right?
Right.
And shout it out. So here, continuing more from the same article, it says in R. Kelly trial, the verdict may hinge on a circle of enablers. Okay, this is by Troy Clawson, same date, August 30th, 2021. There were the assistants who said they were warned to remain silent as they chauffeured female guests to their superstar employer's Chicago area mansion. The associates who quietly passed out his phone number to women and girls at his concerts, encouraging them to contact him and scheduling their visits. And the managers, one of whom described carrying out a plot to illegally marry the R&B star R. Kelly to a 15-year-old girl who thought she might have been pregnant with his child. Mr. Kelly, whose real name is Robert Sylvester Kelly, has pleaded not guilty to the federal charges against him in New York and denies all of the accusations of misconduct. He faces a broad racketeering case that portrays him as the kingpin of a criminal scheme that was meant to boost his music and professional brand, but also recruit women and underage girls for sex. So, real quick, brother, I want to, so that you listeners understand the implications of this becoming a racketeering case. I have a definition here, racketeering definition. The list of federal crimes specified in RICO includes bribery, fraud, gambling offenses, money laundering, financial and economic crimes, obstructing justice for a criminal investigation, murder for hire, and the sexual exploitation of children. At the state level, racketeering includes crimes such as murder, kidnapping, gambling, arson, robbery, bribery, extortion, dealing in obscene matter, and drug crimes. So the implications of this, now that it's become racketeering and they're using language such as criminal enterprise, R. Kelly may not be the only one going down in this case. Definitely, he would be considered sort of the kingpin, as it were. But some of these other people that can now get caught up in the scope of racketeering legalese will be some of these individuals that were involved and complicit with this. One woman testified this week that her first flights to see the singer were booked by one of Mr. Kelly's female assistants, who was aware that she was only 17. Another told jurors that when she was 16, a member of the singer's entourage approached her at a fast food restaurant, gave her Mr. Kelly's phone number, and told her, quote, he wants you to call him. And yeah, man, so I won't go on with that article. I think all this is possible. All this happens that you have R. Kelly's And R. Kelly and who's the other guy? Who are the white guys? Some of the white guys.
Like Epstein,
Epstein,
yeah,
right, and some of the others.
Joe Biden. Oh, my bad, my bad.
Creepy Joe. It's possible to have this in a hypersexualized society because it's such a part of the language, conscious and subconscious, that everybody speaks and understands it. And I don't think that it stands out. I think it only becomes sensationalized, like we said, when it's convenient or there's some other agenda tied to it. Okay, we got to call this out and look at R. Kelly. Yeah. But I think that money.
A lot of times it has to do with the money. Either people not getting paid no more, or people want to get paid or capitalize off of something, and then people start going down.
Right.
That's usually the story of why people get away with stuff for 20, 30 years, and then all of a sudden they go down, and then you're going to find out it got something to do with money.
Right.
In most cases.
Let me tie that to this, and this is going to be my outro quote on this one. We did a video on hypersexualized society, where sex becomes central to people's understanding and processing of life itself and happiness, etc. I think that in the minds of all the involved, even people that see and hear about this is already normal, meaning sort of this behavior that we expect from rock stars, groupies, high profile people, because checking IDs and everything was not something that has ever been done, I think. And when you're talking about rock stars and groupies and underage young women, it's nothing new. I think it's a part of everyday reality that does not shock anyone. I think it becomes legally and politically convenient to speak of as being shocking and reprehensible at times. And like a call and response chorus, the go along, get along crowd agrees to echo the superficial sentiments. So like when they get up on their soapbox and they say, hey, everybody, this is bad. Look at this. It's horrible. And everybody echoes that, like, oh, everybody say ho, and everybody ho, and they're raising their hands, right? But in actuality, it's a response. It's an echo, a reverberation. And I think in the same sense that it's hypocritical for government and lawmakers to sort of shout that when it's convenient, I think the echo it's an echo of the same hypocrisy.
Yeah. Oh man, that's good. So yeah, so it's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed, I think. And I think the deeper people dig and start finding out about these sex crimes in America, I think people are gonna be baffled by the things that they just didn't know.
Right.
Again, with when it comes to the law and legality, you're not dealing with morals. You're not dealing with what you think a person should do or be allowed to do or not. You're dealing with what the state says is okay, or what the federal government said is or isn't okay. And that's what's going to be the trickiest part of these cases. Despite the sexual acts, unlike in the Michael Jackson cases where a lot of the kids were well under the age where they were making those allegations, with R. Kelly, a lot of those kids were of age. And it's going to really show how a lot of the parents had a lot to do with this, like you said. All of that stuff is really going to start to become clear, and I think is long overdue as a conversation that we need to have as a nation as to what is the age of consent, and how should you go about dealing with these type of situations as we move forward in society.
Facts. Yeah, man, that's a good summary. And yeah, everybody listening to this video, we invite you to sound off on that, but sound off on it in your mind first. Think about it. Give it a few moments of thought, and then when you hear these sorts of cases, do you get triggered when you're told to? When you hear a calling, an alert for media that tells you okay, we've got a target now, and we're going to rally and we're going to shout against this target, right? And then are those targets being put up there for to be, to become a poster child for a problem that we know is ongoing and far more pervasive because it's actually normalized in American society. So yeah, man, it is hypocrisy. And when you talk about them indicting people or making this a racketeering case where it's considered an enterprise, even within the scope of that, it seems like they're being very particular about who they're going to involve in that. So one part of this article, and I just found their language interesting. It says, still, prosecutors say some people who had seen indications of the abuse that Mr. Kelly is accused of were not part of the criminal enterprise at his command, but were still enamored by his fame and influence. One woman, for example, told jurors this week that in her first sexual encounter with the singer at a hotel in Florida, the police were notified that her parents could not reach her, and 2 officers arrived to his suite. She was an underage high school student at the time, she testified, and the officers who arrived checked her driver's license. They did not appear to be concerned, she said. They left, she testified, adding that they gave their contact information to the singer and told him that anytime he was in Orlando and needed security, to let them know. The woman, who was 17, said that Mr. Kelly resumed performing a sex act on her minutes later. So you have 2 police officers that showed up there. And speaks to the hypocrisy. They showed up there. These people are sworn public servants. So if anybody should have done something, it would be a police officer. So, but they show up and then they check her ID, confirm she's underage, offer him services anytime he's in town, and leave, and allow him to continue, quote unquote, getting it in, whatever he was doing, no pun intended.
Mhm.
But my problem is this. I mean, one of the issues is this. Why do they use such soft language when they're talking about these police officers? Why are they referred to as not part of the criminal enterprise at his command, but still enamored by his fame and influence? They almost sound like victims themselves, these 2 law enforcement officers,
Right.
Whereas it could be easily found out who they were. I mean, like if you can trace and track and confirm any of the testimony, that should be one, because I'm pretty sure there would be a case number or a report tied to it,
Right. And this happens in Florida, right? You said Orlando. So we talking about Florida, right? And that also goes into finding out what's the truth and what's not. Because in my opinion, if you have 2 cops in Florida come into the room of a popular singer and legitimately, what's the chances of them walking out of there without being bribed, without harassing him? Because I mean, racism is still a thing. And what's the chances of these police officers being so infatuated with R. Kelly that they don't take that as an opportunity to bring him down in a society where that's what Americans do? They bring you down as a black person as quick as possible. So that's where a lot of stuff, when they start throwing out a lot of stories and allegations, you have to find out what is the big picture. What are they really trying to get across? Like you said, why are they trying to make the police officers sound like victims?
Right.
Why is this case one of the cases that they leaked out? Or why are these details being leaked versus other ones? So I think all of this stuff is really as a distraction to really focus in on what allegations are against R. Kelly, and is he guilty of those allegations, versus trying to persuade the public to think one way or another. Because we really don't know.
Right.
We don't even know if a judge is gonna admit that into evidence, or maybe they have, maybe it gets dismissed. So again, a lot of this content to me is just content to stir the pot, to say everybody look at this case so we can fuel this fire of disruption and distraction in America when we got a lot of stuff that we really need to focus on, is including sex crimes against minors. So I still don't think that that issue is being addressed, even with the R. Kelly case, because it's more about what's true, what's not true, and scandal, scandal, scandal.
Right. Well said, man. I think that rabbit hole goes deep, bro, because certain things come to mind as to why the sensationalism and not the focus on the actual known human trafficking and sex trafficking industries. Because by the time you get into what things are making lots of money for people, and this sort of intricate web of money-making industries that choose and spits people out. When you look at porn industries, for example, when you think about the preponderance of minors and other human beings that were sex trafficked into making videos and they're being highlighted on these platforms that are multiple $billion a year industry. I mean, that ties into the porn industry in of itself, man. I mean, it's a mogul. It makes so much money. I mean, it probably rivals or makes more money than a lot of most of the mainstream channels. Though I haven't studied that, but when you talk about the traffic that's in reality and virtual that crosses these segments of society, and they're making money for these platforms, and you got web servers, you've got satellite industries that are involved around this. And then it starts to become more insidious. It seems more wicked, but it's clear. As dirty as it is, it becomes clearer why some things get highlighted and are attention grabbers, while a great majority of the crime that's actually very normalized doesn't seem to get highlighted, and it stays quiet as kept. So
Good question. So yeah, man, that's some good stuff for today.
facts. Well, we'll be back, people. This is Faya, my man, Kanan. We are going to, we'll wrap up for this, but as always, we invite you to like, subscribe, and share, or else. And think about what we say, reflect on it, and give your opinion to yourself, and then give it to us. And we'll be happy to hear about it. Peace.
Peace.